Oh, welcome to another episode of the Growth Compass. Shout out to our sponsor, Senders. If you want to do email deliverability correctly, there's a link somewhere underneath our faces. But without them, it wouldn't be possible to interview awesome people doing awesome things like Kevin. Welcome.
Glad to be here, Blake. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is so cool. So I would assume that there's a number of people that are watching this video that know a lot about what you've done, because there's a lot of stuff out there, which is super cool, and I'm excited to touch on some of it. But for those who don't, if you could just give a quick introduction of yourself and what you're building.
Sure. So I'm probably best known as the father of the AI assistant and voice AI. So if you've ever used Siri or Alexa or anything like that, that came out of our work at a company called General Magic back almost 30 years ago. And it took a long time to realize all the vision because Apple and Amazon and other people got involved, and we lost control of it. But it's getting better, so I'm still in the midst of AI and cybersecurity, and I don't know if you see some awards back there, perhaps some Broadway and film work too. So lots of work going on. But obviously, it's a great time for AI. It is changing everything we do in every business, and I think that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. So is there something you're working on currently, mainly?
Yeah, 4 or 5 things, but so I do keynote about 40 or 50 conferences a year. So I'm certainly out and about, mostly on AI. I also talk about my upcoming book, The Joy Success Cycle, which is not out yet, but it will be someday. Soon. That's right. Right now, one of my companies is AppFance, and at AppFance, we are focused on leveraging AI for software QA, and with a vision that AI finds all the bugs, not people. That's where we've got to get. We are already there as a company. We're already there as a technology. Most people are still out there, doing little bits and pieces of AI. It's very interesting, but they're just confused by it, or they think I've got this little co-pilot and it's really helping. How'd you like to improve your productivity by 100x? Not 100%, 100x, 100 times. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing, right? So that's impressive, and very, very proud of the work we've done there. It's taken more than 10 years. We had a 10-year head start on everyone else. Everyone else in the software QA space said, oh, we should put some generative AI in this thing over the last year. And we go, I'm sorry, we launched that years ago, right? Yeah. So it's fun. And yeah.
Good. All right. Well, I have 2 main things that
Let's do it.
I really want to cover. Well, but just before then, 2 things. So, personal question: when there is somebody that has, I keep referencing all the information out about you, but there's a lot of different people that have these different things. Like when there's so much that you've done, that you can put your name to. How is it that you internally, where do you place everything? Where do you place yourself? Like what is it that you're most, I don't know, proud of?
Wow.
Like you most look back on, you're like, wow, that really happened. I love that.
Yeah. First of all, job 1, be humble. You're starting companies, you're running companies. Whatever you think you've done, there's people who've done a lot more. Sure. Whatever you think you accomplished, there's people who accomplish a lot more. However smart you think you are, trust me, there's people smarter, 100 times smarter than I am. So, I really approach it with a lot of humility and a lot of thought that I was lucky, and I continue to be lucky to invent things that impact humanity. I invented soundproof drywall. It's in every high-end hotel today. It's in every condominium that's been built, or townhome that's been built probably over the last 20 years, so that you can't hear through the walls. That's how they do it. But I invented that, and I invented high R-value windows. We got to retrofit the Empire State Building. I invented a special kind of auction on the web called a multivariate reverse auction. I invented, obviously, the AI voice and AI assistant. All of those were just trying to solve problems. Like, I could see that there was a problem. And all I wanted to do was solve the problem. And I said, nobody solved this. And we're not breaking the laws of physics. Let's figure out how we can put a team together and solve it. It's not more than that. And I think when you have an open mind, and I do live the Joy Success Cycle, I live in that space. So I live with every moment is a moment of joy. It's a moment of opportunity. And then your mind is open. And when your mind is open, you can actually approach these things and do real good, right? So I think when you approach life that way, it changes everything. Just changes everything. That's how you get 95 patents. Not because you're smarter, because your mind was more open to see the problems and come up with solutions.
Yeah, well, that's pretty amazing. I think correlation to something I heard recently from a friend of a friend that I met, and he phrased it very similarly. But he said there's a potential for magic. I mean, that's his vocabulary, the potential for magic in every single moment. And if your mind's not open to that opportunity, then it's this way, which is cool. So aside from along the theme of like the inventing, staying, your mind being open and everything, like what do you say towards like the creative process or something like that as far as inventions go? Because my perspective comes from like a creative, like I make music, I make jewelry, stuff like that, but it's different than like inventing.
Great
something.
question. Great question. So I make music, and I am a musician. I'm a drummer, but I'm also a conductor. I've conducted some 60 different musical shows. So I do a lot in that area. I've also conducted. In fact, I've got a big show coming up at the end of October in Rochester. So touring shows, and this one's a big jazz.
Everybody
Broadway
get out to
thing.
see it.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. So, so I also get to create, and so I have a lot to say about that. So first of all, when your mind is open and every moment is joyful. So every piece of music, like I've got some music on my desktop right now I've been working on. Every piece of music that I look at, every time I'm working on it, there are people better, there are people faster, there's people that are better musicians, there's people more trained, there's people. But I love the creative process and I get joy from it. So I'm very joyful. Now, part of the reason I may be joyful is I'm not burdened trying to earn a living on writing notes on paper. That is a hard living. Taylor Swift aside, right? And so I do think you can end up in sort of doing certain activities that the pressure is so high to make money that you've lost the joy in it. So this is just me, if I were paid like some of my friends to write all the the score for a 30-minute TV show and do that 3 times a week, and I have about 6 or 8 hours to do it fully, like all 30 minutes has to be done. It's got to align. It's got to make sense. And I got to turn it back over. Right. And it's never going to be played by musicians. I didn't write a note. I did it all in a DAW and called it a day. Right. And maybe I might not have a lot of joy going, oh my God, here's the next one. It came across. I don't like this episode. I don't even like, but they pay me $500 every time I do one, and I can pound it out in a handful of hours. Right. And a lot of the people listening to this will certainly be thinking, how could you pound out 30 minutes of music, in a few hours? Well, you have to. That's the job. They're not going to pay you for 3 weeks of work. They're going to pay you for a few hours. And so you got to get it done. And then you become really, really good at that, right? Really good on the keyboard, playing in all these parts, laying up some harmonies, picking the different instruments, pushing the button, pushing it out, right? That's the soundtrack to that episode. You go to the next one. So it's possible that you would lose all of the thrill that I still have because I don't have to make money in music. Sure. Thank goodness, because it's a very hard living, save 0.1% at the top. This is true with Broadway. It's true with all art and performers, right? We all know so many painters. It's incredible. I don't know, 0.1% maybe make a living out of it. It's very hard. It is and art has been a hard living since the church stopped supporting it like 1,000 years ago, right? In a way.
Right. And so your experience writing yourself the music, like is there a correlation to the times that you've come up with inventions or patented ideas or things like that? Like, are there
yes,
correlations?
No question.
In that
no question.
Process?
I will tell you, sometimes I cannot come up with a solution, and then one morning I wake up with it. Somehow it's stewed for weeks or months. I wake up, I go, I got it. We have this, we have this, we have this, we have this. That's all the information we need. This is how we're going to put it together, and we're going to write 1 million lines of code to do that now, right? That is just as creative. In fact, my last patent, which is another AI patent, I don't know, it's 176 pages. I loved every minute of that. I mean, it's so creative. It's also, you're if anyone's done patents, you have to create claims. And those claims not only have to be unique, but they have to be non-obvious. So they have to be unique in the history of humanity and not obvious to those in the state of the art. That's hard. On the other hand, what a joy every time you've got another claim and you go, no, nobody's thought of this, right? Nobody's thought of it. One of the reasons I like talking about music right now, I'm giving a presentation on Wednesday to talk about AI in the performing arts, in music, in a variety of the performing arts, right?
Sure.
And those who are using AI in music creation, music generation today are they're kind of bifurcates, right? You got half the people who said, I spent 10,000 hours learning this instrument. I'm not going to use that stuff, right? And then you got people all the way to people who've never played an instrument in their life and don't know what a note is, and they're making music. Now, of course, the AI is making music, right? I get that. The AI has sampled 100 million songs and can generate anything you want from you just thinking, right? And Suno is the best out there right now. I've used them all, but nothing's going to beat Suno. But what I like about Suno is where they're going with it. It started out with, my mom could make a song. Wasn't a good song, but could make a song, right?
Okay.
And it's moved forward to say, you can now input music that you've created, and it will finish out the arrangement of it, right? With different instruments and different beats and different tempos and different thoughts and different maybe different lyrics. It'll create lyrics for it, and you go, okay, this is interesting. So I've got a melody. Maybe I've got a melody and a little bit of a beat to it, and I say, all right, what I really want to do with this is I really want to make it a 70s guitar rock piece. Boom, 70s guitar rock in 1 minute. Now, I could envision what it sounded like, but I don't play guitar. Now I can play in guitar into a DAW or Finale or something like that. But all of a sudden I've got it. And then I can tweak it. Now, the two new features, right? The new feature over the last few months is stem separation. So now I can pull out all the parts and I can pull out just the guitar part. And maybe I use that somewhere else and maybe I sample something and put that together, right? And shortly in the next few weeks, they're going to have MIDI export, which means I can now take whatever I've created with the machine, export it to MIDI, import that into Finale, Sibelius, whatever, right? And now I have parts for musicians to play. This is fascinating. So I can essentially rearrange anything I've thought of. It started with my music.
Yeah.
And the output is something that I could have arranged, say, in Finale or Sibelius over the course of a week. I might have gotten everything just the way I want it. Or I can push the button and it does it for me. And I go, that guitar part's better than the one I would. Actually, I mean, I was just listening. I go, that bass part is better than the one I would have come up with. It's really good. And I can still edit it, but it's like, great. So everyone's going to have different feelings about this. But for me, for productivity purposes, I could produce music now 10 times faster than I could before. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think I love that this is kind of the direction of a DAW, because I think in order to help ground this idea of like inventions, patents, which not a lot of people have done, like, is there like a DAW for soundproof drywall? Like, how were you putting together these ideas? How were you testing them out, editing them, things like that?
Right. There isn't a DAW, unfortunately, for most things like that, right? In software, you can do digital twins and you can do some things, but for most things, physical products, you can't. And what you have to do is literally experiment. You do something called design of experiment, and you lay out a set of experiments that will give you the outcome or point you in the direction of the outcome. So there we had to invent a certain type of polymer called a viscoelastic polymer. It had to be able to sustain itself inside drywall layers. And of course, all of this was ridiculously hard. None of it had ever been done before. The chemistry had to be developed. A new sort of drywall had to be developed. It all had to be put together. Then you had to develop the machines to manufacture it. And you also had to go to a lab. Now, at the lab, they would build a wall out of your stuff, out of my soundproof drywall, and generate sound on one side and measure the sound on the other. Frequency by frequency, by the way. They do full frequency sweeps, right? And then you come up with something called a sound transmission class, and that was the rating of that wall. And we found that we could build walls 20 dB quieter than regular drywall. It was mind-blowing, even to the people at the lab. They say, this can't be. How can this be? Well, there's a physics property called constrained layer damping, and it will convert acoustic energy to heat energy. But so little heat you can't measure it, right? Because acoustic energy isn't that much. So that was the physics property behind it. And you live and learn. You just dig in. By the way, one of the things I did was read every patent in the constrained layer damping space. Even though there was none in drywall or walls, there were patents around using that to reduce vibrations in disk drives, using it on bridges to reduce vibrations there. And you go, could I apply this in a whole new area?
Yeah.
The answer was yes.
Well, okay. So
and by the way, billions of dollars of that have been sold.
Well, yeah. So to put a little bow, so like a DAW, right, of something like a physical sound dampening drywall would be like this research, this lab environment, like this slightly academic. Okay, cool. Well,
very academic, but there's no machine that you could just go up to and twiddle the things and play in some notes from a keyboard and go soundproof drywall.
Exactly. Right,
I wish. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I think so. Given your space in AI, given how much it gets talked about, all this stuff. I love when people like you come on the show, because it's a chance to level the conversation. Because there's a lot of people, like you're saying, out there that run companies that on the face of it look like you, but it's just like a white label GPT or white label fraud or something like
tons of that.
So
3,000-4,000 companies funded in AI over the last 2 years. 99% put a little wrapper around GPT-4.
So then two things for you. The first one is just to level the conversation. Like, how would you describe what it is when people use it in a conversation? When you say AI, what do you mean? And then the second thing, I just want to get into what the difference is between a company like yours and then a company that's just
generically, when I say AI, I don't necessarily just mean a transformer or just deep learning or any of the kind of machine learning, right? Just all in all, humanity has developed hundreds of algorithms that can learn on their own since the 1950s. This isn't new. We've gotten better, but for example, to build a deep learning model, I need a lot of data. So everyone in industry still uses more traditional machine learning models in certain circumstances when I don't have that much data. I have 30 pieces of data, not 300,000. I can't build a deep learning model. I'm not going to build a transformer out of 30 or 40 or 80 pieces of data, but I can still use those 80 to learn something. And so you don't want to throw that out. So there's all kinds of machine learning. When we built the first AI assistant, we used something called hidden Markov models because that's all we had, and that was the compute horsepower we had. There was no such thing as a transformer, and deep learning had yet to be invented. We had neural nets, but they were very shallow. They were 4 layers deep, not a million layers deep.
Right.
So when I say AI, I do mean generically AI. Most people would say you mean deep learning post 2012, or you mean transformers post 2017. I mean just generically. However, whatever AI you need to use that humanity has developed, use it, and there'll be more coming. Now, when we say generative AI, we generally today are referring to transformers, LLMs, multimodals, etc. But there was generative AI before that. It wasn't necessarily language, but we could generate things literally seemingly out of the ether using a slew of machine learning algorithms, right, to learn and generate something new. So we've been doing that for a lot longer than 2017. But the transformer was interesting because the transformer said, I can go out and learn the entire English language, basically, that has ever been printed anywhere on the internet. I can take 1 trillion phrases, and then I can come back and weight, basically, with probabilities, what word should come after another based on a query, right? That's pretty interesting, actually. And so since 2017, the transformer, which most people know as an LLM, is quite impressive. Now, it can't develop something it's never seen before. This is the problem with the transformer, right? It is only based on human knowledge. No matter how much researchy and stuff that people put into it, it's not going to come up with a brand new chemical formulation that has never been done before. It would have had to read about it somewhere, right? Now, it can combine some things and say, I read about this, this, and this, and someone suggested if you combine, but, so it'll give you some hints, right? But it can't come out and say, I've invented something brand new. that I've never read before, because it's not meant to do that. So we're seeing some asymptoting of, like, GPT-5 is a little better than GPT-4o, but most people would not know the difference at all. I mean, and so we're nearing the end. Why? Because if you go and build a transformer on 10 trillion phrases instead of a trillion phrases, what's the difference? Nothing. We already got all the English language in the trillion. There's not much more to learn, or a variety of languages, right? That's the easiest way to look at it. So I think, there'll be something after the transformer, and people continue to improve even the transformer with different attention and reinforcement learning. But 10 years from now, we probably won't be talking about transformers. That'll be old, and we'll be 2 levels beyond that.
Awesome level. Thank you for that. And then the follow-up is, based on, using all these different little branches of AI, like when we talk about something like Advance versus something that's just a wrapper on GPT, like what is actually the difference between these two?
Sure.
These two types of
the actual difference, one, how it's built, but let me get into the feature set, right? So
let's do it.
In the software QA space, there are, call it 20 vendors. Most of them have a little copilot that they stuck in there that helps you make some decisions, and they say AI. Woo! We don't have a copilot because we let the AI already make the decisions. I don't need the human involved. Now, that doesn't make all the humans happy, but that's the truth. The second thing is we actually go and generate your tests for you, the actual test scripts, the actual code. We generate the code, run it, and come back and say, here are your bugs. Okay, what everyone else has done is said, you go ahead and record your flows one by one. We'll give you some hints about that. We'll try to help you along. You spend 3 months doing that because there's hundreds or thousands of these things that have to be done. We spend an hour. AI does all of it, generates them, and gives you the results. This is like, and we can measure it, right? Literally, we're 100 times more productive than anyone else in the space.
So why is it that people are building more companies like the former and not like yours? Like, is there
yeah, I'll tell you why. Because the R&D for this took 10 years.
Okay.
And 2 million lines of code. So it's much easier for me to have a startup, of which I think there's been about a dozen that all started up in the last 3 years and failed already. Do a startup, put a little wrapper around GPT and say, oh, look, I can generate blah, 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 blah. And then I go to do real work. And I go, but this is no faster and no better than what I was using before. It's cute. It got a little copilot there. And second thing is when I go to test hard things. So when I say test, everyone listening to this is thinking, oh, yeah, to test the website. Okay, no. What you don't know is I was just on the phone with a major bank a little earlier, right? They have about 15,000 applications that they manage in the network. 15,000. 5 of them are related to their website. The rest are internal and run the company. 15,000. Okay. Each of those has between 500 and call it 1,500 test cases. So you start to run those numbers, right? You're talking about maybe 15 to 20 million test cases, each of which has 100 steps at least. So now we're talking about
those are big numbers.
2 billion test steps that have to be executed on a relatively regular basis. All right. I want AI to generate them, run them, and give me the answer. I do not need people. And so that particular company had, tens of thousands of people, internal and external and outsourced and all that, involved in software QA. Tens of thousands. Why? AI does it fully.
Well, so I appreciate you walking through that, because that's a helpful understanding between in your particular use case. Is there a more general way that you could describe the real difference between someone just putting a wrapper and someone actually solving the problem? Is it just that simple?
Sure.
Like, are you actually solving the problem, or is it something more nuanced?
Here's the bottom line. It's easy to put a wrapper around any of the models.
Sure.
And that's something anyone can do in about a weekend. You put a nice UI on it. Maybe it works like a copilot and it helps you think, or it helps you do something, but it doesn't add any value beyond just using GPT-5. That's the first thing to look at.
Okay.
If I go to GPT-5 today and say, write 15 million scripts, test scripts, it can't write the first one. Literally can't write the first one. It will write something, but it won't run. It's junk, and I won't take you through all the reasons why. Okay. But it can't do it. It can't do it because it requires visual cues. It requires understanding of specific applications. Those applications are all behind the firewall. You can't even get to them. Then you don't even know how to fill in the data, so you have to have a training session. Well, there's no such thing as a training session with GPT. You can't really train it in that way. And even if you did, it wouldn't remember it forever because there's very specific places to put data, generate data, get outcomes. So it's not a transformer in the traditional way. For us to generate scripts, we have 5 transformers, none of which is GPT. None of which are large language models. They're all actually small models, highly tuned to do one thing. For instance, caption elements. I need to caption elements in a way that humans would have described that element. Okay, very important. I got to be really good at that with this one model. And so we built a model that's really good at that, right? Then we built another model that's really good at a page location, for example, what's to the left and to the right of other things, right? So you have to have 5 different models to make that work. And then when we finally generate the code, we don't use a transformer at all. We don't use AI. We feed the outcomes and the recommendations to a code generator that looks a little bit like a compiler and let it generate the code because it generates perfect code. That's what it does. That took a decade.
Yeah. Well, that's helpful. So we're saying like there are legitimate differentiators that you're saying there's an actual real, like it's almost like a piece of hardware that you've actually manufactured and put together.
It's 2 million. Yeah, so 2 million lines of code versus 1,000, roughly.
Got it. So Kevin, I got 3 last things for you. The first thing, and you can answer it across all the things that you're doing. We can return back to the music. We talk about advanced, talk about something new, whatever you want. But at the moment, what is something that you would consider a big hurdle for you, and how is it also an opportunity?
Oh, a big hurdle. For me, I take each project, even though I'm multitasking and doing them in parallel, I take each project seriously and make sure that they get done. So like every week I may have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 major things that are due. So, to some extent, the hurdle is always, wow, look at the 5 things that have to get done this week, and they're going to take 300 hours, but I don't have 300 hours in a week. How do I do it, right? I think that's an ongoing hurdle. So it's not the big hurdle like finish the book, which is also a hurdle. So it's less about, how am I going to make that technology work, or how are we going to solve that problem, and more just, I wish I had so many more hours because I'm involved in so many things and they're all due. Something comes due every week, but it's usually, like I said, 5 or 10 things or whatever. Yeah. But what's the opportunity? I'm learning from every one of them. I'm learning to get better at a lot of things. So I'll give you an example. Every day I get 4 or 5 press inquiries, rough numbers, to comment on something that's happened in the industry, either in AI or in cybersecurity. And it used to be that they would ask 4 or 5 questions each, and I would write the answers out and be thoughtful about. Well, now what I do is I write in about 2 paragraphs exactly what I'm thinking about this topic. Here's how I feel. Here's what I want to say. But I don't say how I'm going to say it. It just says, here's what I want to say. These are my opinions. And then I use GPT-5 right now and say, here are the 5 questions. Take my opinion and what I want to get out there and turn it into 5 answers that are appropriate for the press to run with when they're going to quote someone, right? I used to spend 2 hours on the prose to get those sentences right. I didn't have to spend 2 hours on my thought. When I read the question, I know what my thoughts are. Mm-hmm. Like, I know exactly what I'm thinking about, how to deal with that topic, or how I would respond. But getting those sentences right for the press took a long time. Well, now that's not my burden anymore. So now I'm able to produce far more output, still my thinking. So I go through the critical thinking of, here's what I think about this topic, but it does the prose for me, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
It's fabulous, right? So I'm learning more than I've ever learned in my life.
Beautiful. That is so cool. Second is, a little shout out to your framework. And this is an assumption, if you weren't operating within this the framework
Joy
that you're putting
success. Yeah.
forward. Yeah, joy success framework. 10 years ago, how would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself 10 years ago to operate within it?
Or 20 or 30.
Or 20 or 30, like, you know, whatever you want
I've
to
been
pick.
operating in it for a while.
Yeah.
Look, you know, to some extent, it takes people to tell you to write this down before you realize what it is you're doing every day, right? So I realize what I do every day to live in that framework now because I've written it down to create a book. But before I created the book, I didn't realize I was living this. When people would say, "Oh, you approach everything blah 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 blah," right? I didn't know. And boy, you never complain about anything. I go, huh, I should write that down. Why is it that I'm not complaining about? Why is it? It's because I look at every moment from a joy perspective, from a joy moment. Like everything and it can be a moment of joy, and you control that. So if in my younger self, a couple of things I would say: be humble and be more humble. Keep learning. Life is a learning journey. Every day you got to be learning a ton. It'll keep your brain active. It'll keep you active into very old age. We've all seen people who retire. They watch TV, they watch sports. Maybe they go out and play a game of golf. And then you have a conversation with them 5 years later, and the brain isn't quite as ticking as it was. Why? We're not using it. Not using it. It's like any other muscle. If you don't use it, it's going to wither and die, right? So you don't want to be hanging around with a dead brain. That's a really bad thing. So I'd say stay humble. And when you're humble, you're curious because you want to keep learning. When you're not humble, you go, I already know everything. What can anyone teach me? Don't go there. And look, especially when we're younger, we do feel that way. We're out of college and we're smarter than our parents and nothing can stop us. Actually, a lot can stop you. And a lack of humility is the biggest thing that will stop you.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome answer. Last one. And this is my favorite thing ever. What inspires you? Because you're doing so much.
Doing so much. Really. I am inspired to solve problems. I'm inspired to write music. I'm inspired to give talks. I love all of it. I love all of it. I love all of it. And I have an amazing wife and I have great kids. They're older, but two great kids. And, you know, I love, and she inspires me, you know, as well. She's a fabulous CEO, fabulous in the medical device space. Right.
Nice.
And board member. And so, you know, I learned from her every day. I've learned so much about the human body. I didn't know how it worked. I mean, I knew there was a heart and lungs, you know, but
you know how to walk a little bit. I don't know.
Never called to me, but that's her space. That's her field. And the things she knows about little intricacies in the human body, it's like mind blowing.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for, giving all this stuff. I'm inspired. I'm energized.
There you go. You are ready to go.
If anyone wants to, follow along with your journey, anything, what's the best way to do that?
KevinSurace.com. Just go to my website, KevinSurace.com. You'll put it in the notes, I know. And you can even talk to my virtual me there. There's a virtual, literally video me. If you go to the bottom, click video Kevin, I'll come up and say, hi, how can I help you? What's your name? I'll just start talking to you.
That's right. Go talk to him. Go talk to Kevin.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next one. You got it.